Martha Henderson stood alone in the freezing cold of her empty barn at 2 o'clock in the morning, and she was holding a gun. This was not something anyone who knew her would have believed. Martha was the kind of woman who went to church every Sunday, who brought casseroles to sick neighbors, who had never raised her voice in anger in her entire life. But standing there in the dark with the cold metal heavy in her hands, Martha was thinking about ending everything. Not right now, not tonight, but soon. Maybe after the taxes were paid, maybe after she had to sell the house, maybe after one more season of waking up to a home that felt like a beautiful coffin built just for her. Her husband Thomas had been dead for 6 months. 6 months and 13 days, to be exact, though Martha tried not to count anymore. The house was too big without him. The world was too empty. The future stretched ahead of her like an endless dark road with no light at the end of it. Martha had money in the bank, but not much. She had a house that was worth something, but the bank owned half of it. She had grown children who loved her but lived far away and were tired of hearing her voice crack on the phone. She had absolutely nothing that made her want to stay alive except the stubborn habit of breathing. She put the gun back in the cabinet. She was not brave enough to use it. Not yet, Tan. She locked the door. This was her secret. No one could know that Martha Henderson, widow, church member, and former math teacher, had started thinking about death the way other people think about recipes or shopping lists. The problem was the taxes. Always the taxes. Thomas had been a good man in most ways, but he had been careless with money. During the last 10 years of his life, when his illness got worse and worse, their savings had slowly disappeared. Hospital bills, medications, the kind of endless expenses that come with dying slowly instead of quickly. Now the state wanted payment for the property, and Martha did not have enough to pay. She had gone through every account. She had talked to 2 different banks. She had looked at selling the house, but the real estate market was bad. And even if she sold, the money from that would not be enough to start a new life. It would only delay the problem. This was why Martha found herself driving an old pickup truck down a dark county road on December 20th toward a place called Hutchins Agricultural Auction House. She was not sure what she was doing there. Someone at the grocery store had mentioned that they sold equipment sometimes, and equipment could be sold online, and maybe she could make enough money to keep the house for another year. It was a thin hope. But Martha was living on thin hopes now. The auction barn was warm and full of the smell of animals and hay. Maybe 50 people sat in the bleachers. Most of them looked like they knew what they were doing. Martha sat in the back with her paddle number 47. She did not have much money to spend, but she was here to learn how this worked. Maybe she could find something cheap and sell it online for more money. The auctioneer moved fast. He spoke in a rhythm that Martha could not quite understand. One lot after another went by. Equipment, a truck with problems, fencing materials. Martha did not bid on anything. She was too nervous, too unsure, too tired. Then something unexpected happened. They brought out a horse. He was small, maybe only a yearling. His coat was dark and matted and dirty. His ribs stuck out like he was made of wire and skin. One of his ears was torn at the edge. When he moved, Martha could see that something was very wrong with his legs. He walked like every step hurt. The man sitting next to Martha shook his head and looked sad. "That one won't sell," he whispered. "Look at those legs." He should not even be standing up. The auctioneer did not seem to care about the colt. He spoke very fast and said the starting bid was $5. "Nobody move it." He dropped it to $1. Still nothing. He looked angry now. He did not want to stand here all day selling a horse that nobody wanted. The auctioneer said the bid was 50 cents. Martha did not plan to raise her hand. She did not even know why she did it. Something inside her just moved, and her hand went up. The paddle went up. The number 47 was in the air. "We have 50 cents, the auctioneer said. "Going once. Going twice. 47 cents. Another voice called out. Martha's heart stopped. She was about to lose this horse that she did not even know why she wanted. But something happened inside her. Something that had been dead for 6 months suddenly woke up. It was not a good feeling. It was not a happy feeling. It was anger. It was the first real feeling Martha had felt since they put Thomas in the ground. 47 cents, Martha said, and her voice was hard and sharp and cold. The other bidder gave up. The auctioneer looked confused and even a little bit amused. He brought the gavel down hard. "Sold," he said, to number 47. Sold for 47 cents. Martha had just bought a broken horse for less than the cost of a single candy. Bar the man sitting next to her turned and stared at her like she was crazy. "What in the world did you just do?" he asked. "What are you going to do with that animal?" Martha did not have an answer. She was still shaking. She had come to this barn looking for equipment to sell. Instead, she had done something completely insane. She had spent 47 cents on a horse that was so damaged that even the auction people had given up trying to sell him. She was almost out of money. She had maybe $42 left. She had a house she could not afford to keep. She had a life that was not worth living. And now she had a broken horse that was probably dying. It should have been funny. Instead, it felt like the first true thing that had happened to her in months. Martha arranged for the horse to be delivered to her farm. She paid for the delivery with part of her last money. Then she drove home through the darkness and sat in her empty house and waited. The horse arrived on Christmas Eve. Martha stood in the snow and watched them bring him off the trailer. She watched his careful, painful steps. She watched him look around at his new home with eyes that seemed too old for his young body. Martha did not have a stable ready. She did not have good feed. She did not have a plan. She had nothing except this broken animal and a sudden reason to get out of bed in the morning. "What is your name, boy?" she asked the horse. The horse turned and looked at her with those old eyes. Martha saw something in that look. She saw another creature that had been broken and hurt. She saw something that was still alive, even though it probably wanted to die. "My name's Martha," she said, "and I do not know what I am doing, but I guess we can figure it out together." That night, for the first time in 6 months and 13 days, Martha Henderson slept through the whole night without thinking about death once. She slept because she had something to do. She slept because something needed her. She slept because she had found a reason to stay alive, even if that reason had 4 broken legs and did not cost very much money. Chachi did not know yet that this horse would change everything. She did not know that he would dig up secrets buried under snow and time and lies. She did not know that she would discover things about her husband that would break her heart into pieces smaller than she thought were possible. But Martha's life was about to change in ways she could never have imagined. And it would all start with a broken colt that nobody wanted, purchased
Martha
for
named the
47
horse
cents
Chance
on a
because
dark
she
night
did not
when
have
Martha
enough
was ready
money
to
to
give
spend
up
on
living.
anything else, and a name was free. She spent that first morning after Christmas just watching him. Chance stood in the old stall that Martha had prepared, eating from a bucket of sweet feed that Martha had bought with the last of her grocery money. He moved slowly. Every time he put weight on his front legs, Martha could see him wince. His ribs showed through his coat like a map of his suffering. Martha had no idea how to take care of a horse. She had grown up in the city. Thomas had owned horses when they were first married, but that was 40 years ago, and Martha had mostly stayed away from the barn. Now, at 58 years old, with very little money and no experience, Martha was responsible for keeping this animal alive. She went to the library and checked out every book about horses that she could find. She sat at her kitchen table with a stack of books that looked like they belonged in a veterinary school. She read about feeding. She read about diseases. She read about the things that kill horses. By the time she finished reading, she was more scared than before. But she kept going. Every morning, Martha woke up early and went to the barn. She gave Chance fresh water. She gave him hay and the special feed that the book said he needed. She stood next to him and talked to him about nothing in particular. She talked about the weather. She talked about her dead husband. She talked about how she did not know what she was doing and was probably going to kill this horse by accident. Chance listened. He did not seem to judge her. It was on the 3rd day after Christmas that Martha realized something was very wrong. Chance was not getting better. If anything, he was getting worse. His breathing sounded wrong. His eyes looked dull. He was not eating much of his food. Martha could feel panic starting to rise in her chest. She called a veterinarian. The woman who answered the phone sounded tired, like she had been working too long and had seen too much suffering. Her name was Dr. Sarah Chun. "I have a horse that is very sick," Martha said into the phone. Her voice shook. "I do not know what is wrong with him. I do not know if I can afford to pay you, but I need help." Dr. Chun came out on December 28th, which was a day when most veterinarians did not work. She was a woman in her 50s with gray hair and kind eyes that had seen a lot of pain. She looked at Chance for a long time without saying anything. She moved his legs. She looked in his mouth. She felt along his neck and his back. She listened to his heart with a stethoscope. She was very slow and very careful, and Martha could see from her face that she was looking at something very bad. When Dr. Chun was done, she sat down on a hay bale and looked at Martha with an expression that was gentle but also very serious. This horse has been badly abused, Dr. Chen said. Not recently, I think, but for a long time. Years and years. Someone worked him very hard and did not feed him right. Someone did bad things to him. Martha felt tears come to her eyes. Can you fix him? She asked. Can you make him better? Dr. Chen did not look away. I can try, she said. I can give him medicine. I can help with the pain. But Mrs. Henderson, this horse is very damaged. His legs have old injuries that never healed right. His muscles are broken. The damage goes deep. This horse may never be normal again. But he can live? Martha asked. He can stay alive? He can try, Dr. Chen said. With good food and rest and care, maybe he can live. But he will never be a riding horse. He will never be beautiful or valuable. He will just be a horse that survived something that was meant to kill him. Martha looked at Chance, and she understood something very clearly. This horse and she were the same. They were both damaged. They were both supposed to be dead or gone or useful in some way, and they both were not. They were just two broken things trying to survive. I do not care if he is useful, Martha said. I just want him to live. Dr. Chun gave Chance medicine and special vitamins. She left Martha with instructions for care. The bill was $137, which was almost all the money Martha had left in the world. But Martha did not even hesitate. She paid it. That night, Martha could not sleep. She kept thinking about what Dr. Chen had said. Someone had hurt this horse on purpose. Someone had worked him until his legs broke. Someone had been cruel to him. Why? Martha wondered. What had this horse done to deserve pain? She was sitting in the kitchen at 3 in the morning, drinking cold coffee and thinking dark thoughts, when she got an idea that would change everything. Martha went to the old desk where Thomas kept papers. She had not looked through his things carefully since he died. She had not wanted to. But now she opened the drawers and started looking. She found bank statements. She found insurance papers. She found letters from the hospital. She found receipts for things she did not understand. And then, in the bottom drawer, wrapped in clear plastic like someone wanted to hide it, but also wanted to keep it safe, she found a box. Inside the box were photographs. Martha pulled out the first photograph with shaking hands. It showed a beautiful horse, not a broken horse. A strong horse with a shiny coat and a proud neck. The horse was standing in the sun, and he looked like he cost money. He looked like he was supposed to be something important. And standing next to this horse was Thomas. Young Thomas. Thomas the way he was when Martha first met him. And on Thomas's face was an expression that Martha had never seen before. It was love. It was pride. It was a hunger to be part of something beautiful. Martha looked at the photograph for a long time. Then she looked at more photographs. There were dozens of them. All of this beautiful horse. All with Thomas standing next to him. There were also letters in the box. Old letters. And a notebook filled with Thomas's careful handwriting. Martha picked up the notebook with hands that would not stop shaking. She opened it and started to read. The first entry was dated 1993. It said, I bought him today. His name is Dynasty. He is the most beautiful horse I have ever seen. I promise that I will take care of him forever. I promise that nothing bad will ever happen to him. He will live a happy life. He will sire great horses. He will be remembered as great. Martha sat down hard in the kitchen chair. This was not possible. This could not be real. She read the next entry, and the next, and the next. The words blurred together, but the meaning became very clear. Thomas had owned a horse named Dynasty. Thomas had loved this horse more than he had loved most people. And something had happened to Dynasty. Something bad. Something that had made Thomas feel so guilty that he had hidden these photographs and this journal and never told Martha the truth. Martha looked down at the photograph of Dynasty. Then she looked out the window toward the barn where Chance was sleeping. And Martha understood something that made her entire body go cold. She knew, with a certainty that lived in her bones, that the two horses were connected. That Chance was not just any broken horse. That he was part of a story that her husband had kept secret for decades. Martha went to the barn and stood next to Chance in the darkness. She put her hand on his neck and felt his heartbeat. What do you know? She whispered to him. What are you trying to tell me? Chance turned his old eyes toward her, and Martha understood that she had just started something that could not be stopped. She was about to find out the truth about her husband, and the truth was going to break her heart. Martha did not sleep that night. She sat at her kitchen table with Thomas's journal in front of her, and she read. She read all through the dark hours until the sun came up on December 29th. And the more she read, the more she felt like a stranger in her own life. The journal was not written in order. Thomas had written in it over many years, jumping back and forth between past and present. It was like trying to put together a puzzle when half the pieces were missing and the picture kept changing. But slowly, Martha began to understand what had happened. In 1993, Thomas had bought a horse named Dynasty with a business partner named Michael Reeves. Dynasty was an expensive horse. He came from famous bloodlines. Thomas and Michael wanted to use him to have babies with other horses and sell the babies for a lot of money. According to the early entries in the journal, this was working well. Dynasty was making the money. Thomas wrote about how proud he was. He wrote about his dreams for the horse's future. Then, in March of 1994, something terrible happened. Martha read the entry that explained it. Dynasty went lame today. He cannot walk right. The vet says he has a ligament injury. It is bad. Michael says we should kill him. He says a horse that cannot breed is worthless. He says I am stupid to waste money on a broken animal. But I cannot do it. I cannot kill Dynasty. I will not do it. Martha's heart was beating very fast. She kept reading. In April 1994, there was another entry. This one was angry and hard to read because Thomas's handwriting was shaking. Michael did something terrible. He sold Dynasty. He sold him without telling me. He sold him to that place in Lexington, that breeding operation. I told him I did not want that. I told him Dynasty deserved better. He did not care. He said Dynasty was my problem now. He said I could do what I wanted with him. But he already sold him. He already took the money and left. Martha put her hand over her mouth. She could feel Thomas's pain coming off the pages. She could feel his guilt. She read the next entries very carefully. They were short and angry and confused. Thomas had tried to find out where Dynasty was. He had called people. He had asked questions. But nobody would help him. Michael said it was business. Michael said Dynasty was just a horse. Michael said Thomas was being stupid and sentimental. Then there was an entry from 1996 that made Martha's blood go cold. I bought a property in Lexington. I put it in Margaret's name, Michael's daughter. I did not tell her what the property was for. I did not tell her what was happening there. But I know what they are doing to Dynasty. He is being used to breed. He is being worked too hard. He is being hurt. I can feel it even though I cannot see him. And I am paying for it. I am financing the pain of the horse I promised to protect. Martha put down the journal. She could not read anymore. Her hands were shaking so badly that she could barely hold the pen. But she picked up another piece of paper and she started to write down facts. Facts about Thomas. Facts about Michael. Facts about a horse named Dynasty. She worked through the morning. She made lists. She drew connections with lines and arrows. She was trying to create a map of secrets. There was another entry from 2003. Michael is dead. Heart attack. Just like that, he is gone. I went to the funeral and nobody knew. Nobody knew what we did. Nobody knew about Dynasty or the property or the breeding operation. I am the only one who knows the whole story now. I am the only one left who remembers what happened. The guilt will die with me, I suppose. Or maybe it will not. Maybe it will live forever in a broken horse somewhere that I will never know about. Martha read this entry 3 times. The last sentence made her think about Chance. She looked out the window toward the barn. She went back to reading. There were entries from the 2000s. Thomas wrote about his marriage to Martha. He wrote about loving her, but not being able to tell her the truth. He wrote about the weight of the secret. He wrote about how hard it was to live with guilt every single day. And then there was an entry from 2013. I wonder sometimes if Dynasty is still alive. He would be about 20 years old now. If he is alive, he is probably broken, probably useless, probably suffering. And it is my fault. It is all my fault. I put him in that place. I funded his suffering. I chose my comfort and Michael's friendship over doing what was right. Martha closed the journal. She felt sick. She felt like her entire marriage had been a lie. She felt like she had lived with a stranger for 42 years. But she also felt something else. She felt like she was starting to understand something important. Something about the universe and timing and how secrets have a way of coming back around. She looked at the photograph of Dynasty again. She studied his face. She looked at his legs. She looked at the mark on his shoulder, a T that had been branded into his skin. It was a mark that said, "This horse belongs to Thomas." Then Martha did something that she had never done before. She went to the computer and she searched the internet for information about a horse named Dynasty. She searched for news articles. She searched for breeding records. She searched and searched until her eyes hurt. And then she found something. It was an article from a Kentucky horse rescue organization, dated 2004. The article talked about horses that had been taken from a breeding operation that was being shut down by animal control. The article mentioned a stallion with a severely damaged leg. The article said the horse had been in too much pain and had been euthanized. But before the horse was euthanized, the rescue organization had taken some of his DNA. The article did not say why they had done this. It just said that they had kept genetic samples from several of the horses. Martha's heart was pounding. She found a phone number for the rescue organization, and she called it. A young woman answered. Martha explained that she was looking for information about a horse from 2004. "I cannot tell you much," the woman said. "Those records are very old. But if you want, we can run a DNA test. We can see if your horse has any genetic connection to the horses we rescued." Martha said yes, without hesitation. She said she would pay whatever it cost. She gave the woman her address and her phone number. She said she had a horse that she wanted tested. "Where did your horse come from?" the woman asked. Martha did not answer right away. How could she explain that she had purchased a broken horse for 47 cents at a midnight auction? How could she explain that she did not know anything about this horse except that he was damaged, and that he seemed to be connected to her dead husband in a way that she did not yet understand? "I do not know," Martha said finally. "That is what I am trying to find out." After she hung up the phone, Martha went to the barn. She stood in front of Chance, and she really looked at him. She looked at his dark coat. She looked at his damaged legs. Martha went to the barn, which seemed next to Chance in the darkness, and she looked at his shoulder. She put her hand on his neck. She ran her hand over the scar there. "What do you know?" The mark that had been made years ago. "What are you trying to tell me?" she whispered to Chance. Chance turned his old eyes toward her. "Are you Dynasty's baby?" And Martha understood that she had just started something that could not be stopped. Surviving. She was about to find out the truth about her husband. And the truth was going to break her heart. Martha did not sleep. She knew that very soon. She sat at her kitchen table with Thomas about what her husband had done. And she knew that the truth was going to change all through the dark hours. But for now, the sun came up, she just stood with her hand on Chance's neck. And the more she read, she felt his heart, the more she felt like a stranger for the pieces to come together. The journal was not written for the secret to be revealed. Thomas had written the waiting over many years. Martha spent every day in January doing two things. It was like trying to put together a puzzle and trying to find out the truth about her dead husband. And the picture kept changing. She stopped doing normal things. But slowly, Martha began to understand what had happened. She stopped answering her phone when her daughter called. Thomas had bought a horse named Dynasty with a business partner only to find Michael Reeves. She took hair samples from Chance and sent them to the rescue organizations. She waited 2 weeks, and Michael wanted to use him to have babies with other horses. She checked her email. Sell the babies for every day. She was disappointed. According to the early veterinarian in the journal, Dr. Chen, this was working back to check on Dynasty was making the money. Martha was grateful. Thomas wrote about how proud he was. But she also asked a question. He wrote about his dreams for the horse's future. Then, can you tell where in March of 1994, something terrible happened? Can you tell his history just by explaining it? Dr. Chen studied Martha's face. He cannot walk right. She could see that something was wrong. The vet says he has a ligament injury. She could see that Martha was looking for something specific. Michael says we should kill him. A good veterinarian can tell if a horse has been abused is worthless. Dr. Chen says I am stupid to waste money on a broken animal. We can see signs of neglect. I cannot. We can sometimes see patterns that tell us what happened to an animal. Martha's heart was beating very fast. Is something wrong with Chance? Martha told Dr. Chen about April 1994. She told her about there was another entry. She told her about Dynasty. Angry and hard. She told her about the breeding Thomas's handwriting was shaking. Dr. Chen listened without interrupting. He sold Martha was done. He sold him without sat down on the hay bale. He sold him to that place in Lexington. That think your horse is connected to this? I told him I did not want that. Dr. Chen Dynasty deserved. Martha nodded. He did not say the words out loud. He said Dynasty was my problem. If that is true, he said I could do what I wanted with him. Then this horse is carrying the consequences of decades of abuse. Martha put her hand over than I thought. She could feel Thomas's pain coming off the pages. I know someone at a university in Louisville who studies horse genetics. She read the next entries very carefully. She can help. They were short. Dr. Chen made a phone call that day. Thomas had tried to find out where Dr. Patel, who studied horse genetics. He had asked Chen explain the situation, but nobody would help him. And Dr. Patel said it was come to Martha's farm. Michael said Dynasty waited for Dr. Patel. Michael said Thomas was being stupid and sentimental. She hired a private investigator. Then there was an entry from 1996. Martha had found the woman's name Martha's blood go cold. Her name was Sarah Property in Lexington, and she had a small office in Margaretstown nearest Michael's daughter's farm. I did not tell her what the property and sharp eyes that looked like. I did not tell her what was happening there. Martha sat across from her in a small office. I know what they are doing to Dynasty. Smelled like coffee. He is being used to breed paper. He is being to know about a breeding operation. He is being hurt, Martha said. I can feel it even though I cannot see him. It was probably shut down by animal control around 2004. I am financing the pain of the horse I need to know who owned it. I need to know what happened down the journal. Sarah Price asked questions. Her
She
hands
wrote
were
down
shaking
names and
so
dates.
badly that she
She asked why
barely hold
Martha
the
wanted
pen.
to know.
But she
Martha
picked up
told
another
her a
piece of
part of the
paper,
truth,
and she started
but
to
not all
write
of
down
it.
facts.
She said that her
Facts
dead
about
husband
Thomas
might have been
facts
involved
about
with the
Michael,
operation
facts
somehow.
about a horse
This
named
is going to
Dynasty.
cost money. She
Sarah
worked through the
Price
morning.
said.
She made
Investigation
lists.
work is
She drew
expensive.
connections with
Can you
lines and
pay?
arrows.
Martha looked at
She
the
was
money
trying to
she had
create a
left.
map of secrets.
It was not much.
There was
But
another
she
entry
decided
from
that knowing the
2003.
truth was worth
Michael
more
is
than
dead.
keeping a little bit
Heart
of money.
attack.
Just
She
like
agreed
that,
to Sarah's
he is
price.
gone.
I
will
went to the
find out what you
funeral
need to
and
know.
nobody knew.
Sarah Price
Nobody
said.
knew what we
Give
did.
me 2 weeks.
Nobody knew about
2 days
Dynasty
later,
or
Dr.
the
Patel
property
came to the
or the
farm.
breeding operation.
Dr. Patel was
I
a
am the
young
only
woman
one
in
who
her
knows the
30s.
whole story now.
She was excited.
I am the only
and
one
energetic.
left who remembers
She
what
moved
happened.
around Chance like
The
he
guilt
was the
will
most
die with
interesting
me, I
thing she
suppose.
had ever seen.
Or maybe it will
She
not.
took hair samples.
Maybe it will live
She
forever
examined
in
his
a
teeth.
broken horse
She looked
somewhere
at his
that I will
bones
never know
and his
about.
muscles. Martha
She
read
looked
this
at his
entry
scars.
3 times.
This is a
The last
high-quality
sentence made her
horse.
think about
Dr.
Chance.
Patel said
She
finally.
looked out the window.
Look at his
toward the
bone
barn.
structure.
She went
Look
back
at the
to
way
reading.
his body is
There were
built.
entries from the
Someone
2000s.
paid money for his genetics.
Thomas
at some
wrote about
point.
his marriage to
Whoever
Martha.
bred this horse
He wrote
had
about
money.
loving her,
but then something
not
happened.
being able to tell her
Something
the truth.
bad.
And
He
all
wrote about
of that
the weight
quality
of the
was
secret.
wasted on
He
suffering.
wrote about how hard
Martha
it was
felt
to
tears
live with
in her
guilt
eyes.
every single
Can you
day.
test his DNA?
And then there was an
Martha
entry
asked,
from 2013.
Can you find out where he came from?
I wonder sometimes
Yes,
if Dynasty
Dr.
is still
Patel
alive.
said.
It will
would be
take a
about
few
20
weeks.
years old now.
But I can search
If he is
databases
alive,
of registered
he is probably
horses.
broken.
I can
Probably
find his
useless.
genetic match if
Probably
he was
suffering.
registered.
And
It
if he
is my
came from a
fault.
known bloodline,
It is all my fault.
We will find
I
it.
put him in that place.
Martha sent in the
I
samples.
funded his suffering.
She paid the money.
I chose my
and
comfort
then she waited
Michael's
again.
friendship.
January
overdoing
turned
what was
into
right.
February. Martha
The weather
closed
got
the journal.
colder.
She
There was
felt
snow.
sick.
Martha
She
woke
felt like
up
her
one
entire
morning
marriage
and
had
found
been a
that
lie.
3 feet
She
of
felt
snow
like
had
she had
fallen
lived with a
during the
stranger
night.
for
The
42
whole world
years.
was white and
But she also
silent
felt something
and
else.
beautiful and
She
terrible.
felt like she was
She
starting
went
to
to the barn
understand
and
something
found
important.
Chance standing
Something
in
about
his
the
stall.
universe.
She
and
noticed
timing
something that
and
made
how
her stop.
secrets have a way
His
of
shoulder
coming back
scar.
around. The tea that
She looked at the
Thomas had
photograph
branded
of
into his
Dynasty
skin.
again.
Martha
She studied
studied
his
it very
face.
carefully.
She looked at his
She had
legs.
seen this mark before.
She looked at the mark
She had
on his
seen it in the
shoulder.
photograph
A
of
T
Dynasty.
that had been
The
branded
mark was
into
the
his
same.
skin.
It was a
AT,
mark that said,
and it was in the
"This
same
horse
place on
belongs
the
to
shoulder."
Thomas. Martha
Then
went back
Martha
to the
did
house.
something that she had
She
never
pulled
done
out
before.
all of Thomas's
She went to the
photographs.
computer.
She looked
and
at
she
Dynasty
searched the
shoulder.
internet for information
Yes,
about a
the
horse
T was
named
there.
Dynasty.
The same T.
She searched for
The
news
same
articles.
marks. Thomas
She
had
searched for
branded his
breeding
horses.
records.
Of course
She
he had.
searched and
This
searched
was the
until
way
her
he
eyes
had
hurt.
marked them as
And
his
then she
own.
found something.
Martha felt
It was an
something
article
break
from a
inside her
Kentucky
chest.
horse rescue
The
organization.
email from Dr.
dated
Patel came on a
2004.
gray afternoon.
The article
in
talked about
mid-February.
horses that
Martha
had been
was
taken
standing
from
in
a
the
breeding
barn
operation
when she got the
that was being
notification
shut
on her
down
phone.
by animal
She
control.
read the subject
The article
line.
mentioned a
Genetic
stallion
results
with a severely
Chance's
damaged leg.
parentage.
The
She
article
did not
said
want
the
to read
horse
it.
had been in
She
too
wanted
much
to delete
pain
it.
and had
She
been
wanted to go back
euthanized.
to not knowing.
But before the
But she
horse was
opened the email.
euthanized,
The
the
words
rescue
swam in
organization
front of her
had
eyes.
taken some of his
Testing
DNA.
confirms
The
that
article
Chance
did
has a
not
genetic
say why
match
they had
to a
done this.
registered stallion.
It just said that they
named
had
Dynasty
kept genetic
or
samples from several
1988.
of the horses.
Probability
Martha's
of
heart was
paternity,
pounding.
98.7%.
She found a phone number for the rescue organization.
This horse
and
is
she called
almost
it.
certainly
A young
the
woman
biological
answered.
offspring
Martha
of
explained
Dynasty.
that she was looking
Martha
for
sat
information
down in
about
the
a
snow.
horse from 2004.
She did not feel the cold. I cannot
Chance
tell you
was
much,
Dynasty's son,
the woman said.
This broke
Those records are
suffering
very
horse
old.
standing
But if you
in her
want,
barn was
we
the
can run a
living
DNA
proof
test.
of her husband's
We
guilt.
can see if your
He
horse
was the
has
grandson
any
of
genetic
greatness
connection to
and
the
the
child
horses
that
we
we
rescued.
rescued. He was the
Martha
secret
said yes
walking on
without
4
hesitation.
broken legs. She said
That
she would
evening,
pay whatever
Sarah
it
Price
cost.
called.
She
I found
gave the woman
information,
her address
Sarah said,
and her phone number.
about the breeding operation.
She said she had a horse
It was
that she
owned by a
wanted
woman
tested.
named
Where
Margaret
did your horse
Reeves.
come from? She
The
was
woman
Michael
asked.
Reeves's daughter.
Martha did not
According
answer
to
right
county
away.
records,
How could she
the property
explain
where
that she
the
had
operation
purchased
was
a broken
located
horse
was
for
purchased in
47 cents at a
1996
midnight
by
auction?
someone named
How could she
Thomas
explain
Henderson?
that she did
He
not
put it
know
in
anything
Margaret's
about
name.
this horse
Martha
except
felt
that he was
like all
damaged
the air had
and that
left
he
her
seemed
body.
to be connected
Are you
to her
sure?
dead husband
Martha
in a way
whispered.
that she did
Yes,
not yet
understand.
Sarah said.
I
do
have the
not know,
documents.
Martha said
Your
finally.
husband purchased
That
that
is what I am
property
trying to
and
find
put it in
out.
someone else's
After
name.
she hung up the
That
phone,
property was
Martha
used
went
for
to
a
the bar.
horse breeding operation.
She stood in front of
that
Chance,
animal control
and she really
shut down
looked at him.
in 2003.
She looked at his dark coat.
Multiple animals
She
were
looked at his
neglected.
damaged legs.
At least one stallion was euthanized due to injuries from abuse. Martha could not speak. She could not breathe. She could not think. Mrs. Henderson? Sarah asked. No. Are you
Martha
okay?
said.
I am not okay. My husband paid for his own horse to be abused. He paid money to finance the suffering of an animal he claimed to love. He hid it from me for 30 years. And now I own that horse's son, and I own the truth about everything he did, and I do not know how to live with this. She hung up the phone. Martha went to the barn. She stood next to Chance, and she finally let herself cry. All the grief that she had been holding came pouring out. Grief for Dynasty. Grief for Chance. Grief for the man she thought she had married. Grief for herself and her stupid, broken life. Chance stood next to her while she cried. He did not move away. He did not judge. He just stood there, breathing, suffering, surviving, just like Martha was trying to do. I am sorry, Martha whispered to him. I am sorry for what my husband did to you. I am sorry for what my husband did to your father. I am sorry that you have to carry the weight of his guilt." Chance turned his old head and looked at Martha with eyes that had seen too much pain. And Martha understood that her life was about to change forever. The secret was out. The truth was known. And she could never go back to the comfortable lie she had been living. Martha sat at her kitchen table for 3 days after learning the truth. She did not eat. She did not sleep. She did not answer the phone. She just sat there and stared at the wall and tried to understand how to live as a person whose entire life had been built on a lie. Thomas had seemed like a good man. He had been kind to her most of the time. He had built a good life. They had raised children together. They had grown old together. But underneath all of that goodness, underneath all of that kindness, there had been a secret so terrible that it had eaten him up from the inside. He had financed animal abuse. He had let guilt consume him instead of actually fixing anything. He had chosen to feel bad about what he had done instead of choosing to stop doing it. And he had never told Martha. He had let her love him while he was carrying this weight. He had stolen her right to know the truth. On the 4th day, Martha got out of bed. She went to the barn and fed Chance. She looked at him very carefully. She could see that he was getting a little bit better. His ribs were not quite as visible. He was eating more. His eyes seemed a little bit brighter. "You are going to live," Martha told him. "I do not know how I know that, but I know it. You are going to survive this." That afternoon, Martha did something that changed everything. She went to the bank. Martha had been thinking about the secret accounts that Thomas had kept. She had been thinking about the money that he had hidden, money that he had accumulated over decades and never told her about, money that he had used to finance his guilt instead of using it to actually help. She started asking questions. She brought documents. She talked to the bank manager for 4 hours. Slowly, carefully, with the help of lawyers and accountants, Martha began to uncover the full extent of Thomas's hidden finances. There were accounts she had never known about. There were investment properties. There were stocks and bonds and money market accounts. There was enough money to change her life completely. There was enough money to save the farm. There was enough money to do something real. Martha made a decision. She sold the investment properties. She liquidated the hidden accounts. She gathered together all of Thomas's secret money. And then she did something that would have shocked Thomas if he had still been alive. She started the Dynasty Foundation. The purpose of the Dynasty Foundation was simple: to rescue horses that were abused and neglected, just like Dynasty had been, to give them medical care, to help them heal, to give them a second chance at life, the way Martha was trying to give Chance a second chance. Martha hired Dr. Chun as a consultant. She hired Sarah Price to help her run the organization. She used Thomas's guilty money to build a facility on what was left of the farm. She built stalls and pastures and an arena for rehabilitation. By late spring, the Dynasty Foundation had rescued 7 horses. By summer, there were 12. By autumn, there were 23. Each horse had a story. Each horse had been broken by humans. Each horse had survived something that was supposed to kill them. Martha worked every single day. She fed horses. She cleaned stalls. She worked with Dr. Chun to help the animals heal. She raised money from donors who cared about animal welfare. She became a person who mattered. She became a person with purpose. And Chance became the symbol of everything the Dynasty Foundation stood for. By August, Chance could walk almost normally. By September, his coat was shiny and healthy. By October, he was strong enough to be ridden, carefully and slowly, by Martha's trained staff. He would never be a great horse. He would never sire the next generation of champions. But he was no longer suffering. He was no longer broken beyond repair. One morning in late October, Martha stood in the barn and looked at Chance. She put her hand on his shoulder, on the scar where the T had been branded so many years ago. The scar would never go away. It would be part of his body forever, just like the trauma would be part of his mind forever. But he was alive, and he was healing, and he was safe. "Thank you," Martha whispered to him. "Thank you for leading me to the truth. Thank you for saving my life." Martha's daughter came to visit in November. Her name was Sarah, and she had been worried about her mother ever since Thomas died. But when she arrived at the farm and saw what Martha had done, she understood that her mother was no longer dying. Her mother was living. "This is amazing," Sarah said, walking through the facility. "This is the most beautiful thing I have ever seen." "It should have been Thomas who did this," Martha said. "He had 40 years to make this right. He had decades to do something real instead of just feeling guilty. But he never did. So I am doing it instead. Sarah looked at her mother with new respect. "You are not angry at him anymore," Sarah said. "It was not a question." "I am," Martha said. "But I cannot change what he did. I cannot make him understand his own guilt. All I can do is take his money, which was built on his guilt, and use it to actually help the creatures he hurt. That is the best ending I can create. I am not
Martha
okay.
established
My
a
husband
scholarship
paid for his
program.
own horse
Young
to be
people
abused.
studying
He
animal
paid money
welfare
to finance
apply
the
for
suffering
grants
of an
from the
animal
Dynasty
he claimed to
Foundation.
love.
She
He
worked
hid it
with
from
me
local
for
high
30
schools
years.
to teach students
And now
about
I
proper
own that
horse care.
horse's son.
She gave
And I
lectures
own the
about the
truth about
dangers of
everything
animal
he
abuse.
did.
And
She
I
used
not
her
know
story
how
to
to
help
live with
other
this.
people understand
She
the
hung up the
connection
phone.
between
Martha
cruelty
went to the
and
barn.
consequence.
She stood next
By
to
the end of
Chance,
the first
and
year,
the Dynasty Foundation had rescued and
all the grief that
rehabilitated
she had been
43
holding
horses.
came pouring out.
21 of them
Grief
had been
for
placed in
Dynasty.
good homes.
Grief for Chance.
The others were kept
Grief
at
for
the
the man
facility
she thought
where
she
they
had
would
married.
live out their lives.
Grief for
in safety.
herself and her
On the
stupid,
one-year anniversary
broken
of
life,
Martha
Chance
buying
stood
Chance
next
at
to
the
her while
auction
she
for
cried.
47 cents.
He did not move away.
Martha stood in
He
the
did not
snow
judge.
and looked back
He just
at
stood
everything
there,
that had happened.
breathing.
She had come to
suffering,
that auction
surviving.
suicidal, just like
She had been
Martha
ready
was
to
trying
give up
do.
on life.
I am sorry.
She had bought a
Martha
broken
whispered
horse
to him.
as an act
I am
of
sorry for what
desperation.
my husband did
And
to
that
you.
broken horse
I am
had
sorry
saved
for
her
what my
life.
husband did
He
to
had
your
shown
father.
her that survival
I am
was
sorry
possible.
that you have to
He
carry
had
the
shown
weight
her
of
that
his guilt.
healing could happen.
Chance turned
He
his
had shown
old
her
head
that
and
purpose
looked at
could
Martha
come
with
from the
eyes
darkest
that had
places.
seen too much
He had
pain.
shown her that it was
and
never
Martha
too late to
understood
do
that
the
her
right
life
thing.
was about
Martha
to change
walked to the
forever.
barn where
The
Chance
secret was
standing.
out. She had
truth
given him
was
a
known,
bigger stall,
and she could
and a
never
better
go
life.
back to the
She had
comfortable
given him
life she had
safety
been
and
living.
care. And
Martha
a reason
sat
to
at her
live.
kitchen table
He had
for
given her
3
the same
days
thing
after
back.
learning the truth.
"We made it,"
She did not
Martha
eat.
said to him.
She did not
"We
sleep.
both made it through.
She did not answer
We
the
both
phone.
survived."
She just
Chance
sat
turned
there
his
and
old
stared
eyes
at the
toward
wall.
her
And
and
in
tried
that
to understand
look,
how to
Martha
live
saw
as a
acceptance.
person whose
She
entire
saw
life had been
forgiveness.
built on a lie.
She saw understanding.
Thomas had seemed like a
The
good
snow
man.
fell around
He had
them,
been kind to her
covering
most
the
of
world
time.
in white silence.
He had built a good life,
just like it had a
they
year
had raised
ago
children
when
together.
everything changed.
They had grown old
But
together.
this time,
But
Martha
underneath
was not
all of
afraid
that
of the
goodness,
goodness.
underneath
Time,
all of that
Martha was not
kindness,
thinking about
there had been a
death.
secret
This
so
time,
terrible that
Martha
it had
was thinking
eaten him
about
up
all
from
the
the
horses
inside.
she would help.
He had financed
All the
animal
animals
abuse.
she would save.
He had let
All
guilt
the purpose
consume him
she had
instead
found
of
in the
actually
wreckage of
fixing
her broken
anything.
life.
He had chosen
Thomas
to
had
feel
kept the
bad about
secret
what
for
he had
30
done
years.
instead of choosing
Thomas
to
had
stop
let
doing
guilt
it.
consume
And
him
he had never
without
told
ever
Martha.
taking real action.
He had let her love him
But Martha
while he
was
was
different.
carrying this weight.
Martha was
He had
taking the
stolen her
secret
right to
and
know
the
the
guilt
truth.
and the broken
On the
horse.
4th day,
And she was
Martha got out of
transforming
bed.
them into
She went to the
something that mattered.
barn and fed
She was
Chance.
transforming
She
them
looked
into
at
a
him very
place where
carefully.
broken things
She could
could
see that he
heal,
was getting a
where
little bit
forgotten
better.
animals
His
could be
ribs were
remembered,
not quite
where
as visible.
suffering could
He
become
was eating
meaning.
more. The
His
Dynasty
eyes seemed a
Foundation
little
would
bit
grow.
brighter.
Martha
You are
would
going
help
to live,
hundreds of
Martha
horses
told
over
him.
the years.
I do not know
She
how
would
I
never
know
be
that,
famous,
but I know it.
She would never
You
be
are going to
rich,
survive this.
but she would be
That
alive in a
afternoon,
way that she
Martha
had
did
never
something
been
that
alive
changed
before.
everything.
And it
She
had
went to
all
the
started
bank.
with a
Martha
worthless
had been
Colt
thinking
that
about the
nobody
secret
wanted,
accounts that Thomas
purchased
had
for
kept.
47
She had been
cents by a
thinking
widow
about the
who was
money
ready
that
to
he had
die.
hidden.
Money that he had accumulated
valuable
over
things in the
decades
world
and
are
never
the
told
ones
her
that we
about.
find in the
Money that he
darkness.
had used to
Sometimes,
finance his guilt.
the greatest
instead
gifts
of using
come from
it
the
to
creatures
actually
we
help.
save.
She started
Sometimes,
asking questions.
the broken horse
She
is
brought
the one who
documents.
heals the broken
She
person.
talked to the bank
Martha
manager
looked
for
at
4
Chance
hours.
one more time before
Slowly,
going back to the
carefully,
house.
with the
She
help
looked
of
at his
lawyers
scarred
and
shoulder.
accountants.
Martha
Martha
began
began
to
to uncover the
too
full
much
extent
pain.
of Thomas's
She looked at the
hidden
market,
finances.
said,
There
"This
were
horse
accounts
belongs to
she had
Thomas."
never known about.
But that was not
There
true
were
anymore.
investment properties.
Chance did not belong
There were
to
stocks
Thomas.
and bonds
Chance
and money
belonged to
market
Martha
accounts.
now.
There
And
was
more
enough money
importantly,
to change her
Chance
life
belonged to
completely.
himself.
There was enough
He was his
money
own
to save
horse.
the farm.
He was a
There was
survivor.
enough money to
He
do
was a
something
living
real.
proof that
Martha
no
made a
creature
decision.
is ever
She
truly
sold the
worthless,
investment properties,
and no life
she
is
liquidated
ever
the hidden
beyond
accounts.
redemption.
She
Martha
gathered
closed
together
the barn
all
door
of
against
Thomas's
the snow,
secret money,
and she went
and then she
inside
did
to
something
plan
that would have
tomorrow.
shocked Thomas
Tomorrow,
if he had still
there would
been
be
alive.
more horses to
She
rescue.
started the Dynasty
Tomorrow,
Foundation.
there would be
The
more
purpose
healing
of the
to do.
Dynasty Foundation
Tomorrow,
was simple.
there would be more
to
purpose
rescue
to find.
horses that were
But
abused
tonight,
abused and neglected.
Martha could rest,
just like
Tonight,
Dynasty had been.
Martha could sleep.
To give them medical
Tonight,
care.
to
Martha
help them
could
heal.
finally
To
understand
give them a
what it
second
meant to
chance
be
at
alive.
life.
The way Martha was trying to give Chance a second chance. Martha hired Dr. Chun as a consultant. She hired Sarah Price to help her run the organization. She used Thomas's guilty money to build a facility on what was left of the farm. She built stalls and pastures and an arena for rehabilitation. By late spring, the Dynasty Foundation had rescued 7 horses. By summer, there were 12. By autumn, there were 23. Each horse had a story. Each horse had been broken by humans. Each horse had survived something that was supposed to kill them. Martha worked every single day. She fed horses. She cleaned stalls. She worked with Dr. Chun to help the animals heal. She raised money from donors who cared about animal welfare. She became a person who mattered. She became a person with purpose. And Chance became the symbol of everything the Dynasty Foundation stood for. By August, Chance could walk almost normally. By September, his coat was shiny and healthy. By October, he was strong enough to be ridden, carefully and slowly, by Martha's trained staff. He would never be a great horse. He would never sire the next generation of champions. But he was no longer suffering. He was no longer broken beyond repair. One morning in late October, Martha stood in the barn and looked at Chance. She put her hand on his shoulder, on the scar where the T had been branded so many years ago. The scar would never go away. It would be part of his body forever, just like the trauma would be part of his mind forever. But he was alive, and he was healing, and he was safe. "Thank you," Martha whispered to him. "Thank you for leading me to the truth. Thank you for saving my life." Martha's daughter came to visit in November. Her name was Sarah, and she had been worried about her mother ever since Thomas died. But when she arrived at the farm and saw what Martha had done, she understood that her mother was no longer dying. Her mother was living. "This is amazing," Sarah said, walking through the facility. "This is the most beautiful thing I have ever seen." "It should have been Thomas who did this," Martha said. "He had 40 years to make this right. He had decades to do something real instead of just feeling guilty. But he never did. So I am doing it instead." Sarah looked at her mother with new respect. "You are not angry at him anymore," Sarah said. "It was not a question." "I am," Martha said. "But I cannot change what he did. I cannot make him understand his own guilt. All I can do is take his money, which was built on his guilt, and use it to actually help the creatures he hurt."